Welcome to Sit Down News. Tonight, I'm going to tell a story that happened sometime between 2013 and 2014. Back then, the Gambino family had shelved a couple of their guys, and that means that they made them no longer active and they were no longer recognized as friends with that family. And the rumor that was going around was that the Sicilian faction who had taken over their family was shelving people that were close to the inner circle of John Gotti. We don't know if that was true or not, but there was some things that took place that kind of led people to believe that. I don't know if that was really the case. And I had heard a rumor about Lenny Di Maria, which is over here. And Lenny's a Caporegine with that family. He's an old timer, very well-liked guy. At the same time, I became friendly with a Bonnano member named Anthony Caponigro, and his nickname is Little Anthony. And he had called me to meet with him, and we were making small talk. And I had mentioned that I heard Lenny's name came up, and I had mentioned that I had heard it from Anthony Guzzo, but I didn't tell him that. But I said, I heard that, is it possible that they shelved Lenny? And he said, oh my God, I didn't hear that. And I said, yeah, I hope that's not true, because he's a real good guy and he's an old timer. It would be such an insult. And we made small talk and made nothing of it. And we went about our ways that night. A couple of days later, he got in touch with me again, and he asked to see me back at the liquor store. So I took a ride back to Queens, and I went to the liquor store, and he says, come on, let's go take a walk. And we walked around a block, and his words, I never forget. He said to me, I got to tell you, I had to throw you under the bus. I says, throw me under the bus with what? He said, well, I went to a couple of the Gambino, my friends, a couple of guys I know with the Gambinos, and I mentioned what you said about Lenny. So I said, Anthony, why did you even go and do that? I don't even know if it's true. Well, it just came up and I said it. He says, they were pressing me to say who said it. And, I gave you a name. I said, all right, Anthony. And we made some more small talk, and I went home. But when I left, I now knew Little Anthony's character and knew I couldn't trust him no more. And he showed me his hand that night. So I went home again. A couple of nights later, I get a telephone call from somebody telling me that they wanted to see me at a pizzeria restaurant in Ridgewood, Queens. I went by myself, and sitting there was this Sal Lombardo. And at the time, Sal Lombardo was an associate to the Gambinos. Today, he's a friend. And he speaks with an accent. So, hey, John, how are you? I said, hello. And he began to tell me that he said that he heard that Lenny is very upset and wants to get to the bottom of who's spreading this rumor, and that my name came up and that I'm on the hook. So I said, on the hook for what? Well, I don't know. There's trouble. I says, well, who am I here to see? Because he's an associate. He said, well, Anthony's coming. He means Little Anthony. It's all right. We'll wait for Anthony to come. And in comes Anthony walking in with Paul Simplice and Anthony Licata, two friends with the Gambino family, meaning that they were made members. Well, Little Anthony didn't know, although I didn't know Paul, I had met Anthony Licata through little Joey Benedetto, and I met Anthony Licata officially as a friend. So we were introduced as friends in that life. So Little Anthony says hello to me, and he introduces me to Paul officially. And Paul was a little standoffish because they came in there all huffed up, like, they're going to protect their bagada, their family, for somebody who's talking about somebody. And when he went to introduce me to Anthony Licata looked at me and smiled and he said, hey, John, how you doing? Hey, Anthony, how are you? And I pulled him aside. what's the story? No, no, we just came here, came to get a bite to eat, have a cappuccino. Never mentioned this whole Lenny DiMaria thing. And I sat there with them for 10, 15 minutes and nothing. Nobody ever mentioned nothing. And after that, said my goodbyes and I left. I was shaking my head. And this little Anthony was a little troublemaker. So I left there and I went back to Howard Beach. I called up Blaze Carrazzo, and Blaze Carrazzo was with Lenny DiMaria. And what I mean by that is that he was in his crew. I said, Blaze, I'm at Ragtime. Come and meet me. I want to talk to you. And Ragtime is a corner store on Crossway Boulevard in Howard Beach. A couple of minutes later, he lived down a couple of blocks away. And Blaze pulled up. I told him the whole story, what took place. He didn't have too many nice things to say about this little Anthony. As a matter of fact, he told me, I think they shelved him one time and took him off the shelf. I really didn't care about that. And I said to him, I said, look, I heard that Lenny is looking to get to the bottom of this. He wants to know who spread this rumor. I'm not going to say where I heard it from, but I'm the guy who said it to this little Anthony and brought it, and he brought it to this Paul and the other Anthony. And if Lenny wants to know or he wants to see me, I'll come and see him. I meant no disrespect to Lenny. And he says, listen, I'm telling you, Lenny's going to say, forget about this, because Blaze knew what kind of guy Lenny is. Lenny's an old timer. And of course, he went back and spoke to Lenny, got in touch with me a few days later and said, what did I tell you? I said, Lenny said to tell you, forget about it, right? Which was the respectful thing to do. And I respect Lenny because he's an old timer. And I had met Lenny a couple of times after that. Lenny was had so much respect that he never even brought it up, never even asked me about it. And so this story that I'm telling is for a reason. This is about the treachery, how these guys are in this life, the washwoman tactics, how they'll turn on you in a minute and put you in a mix if you're not careful. And, and it's also a story of the old and the new. So Lenny DiMaria represents the old in that life. And the guy like little Anthony represents what's now in this life, the new. And that's why you'll hear guys in the street that are out there old times. They told me a long time ago, I should have listened to them. That life is over with, because as we all get old and we're all going to die one day in this life, unfortunately, Lenny's getting old. He's up there now. And I hope he lives to 100 or whatever. But the world is going to lose Lenny one day. And so is the mob. And when you lose guys like Lenny DiMaria and a lot of the old timers that have passed on, you lose the core value of what that life was about. And that dies with them. And these guys that are passing away and dying off, all of that dies with them. And now you have this new generation of the mob. And little Anthony represents what that new generation is about. And it's a washwoman, backbiting, treacherous, very selfish, out for themselves, and troublemakers. And it's unfortunate, but in the end, it's funny. Who do you think looked bad? It wasn't me. I never even told anybody that it was Anthony Guzzle that told me. It was little Anthony, the troublemaker, that tried to cause all this trouble. And Blaze had told me, he should have never did that. Using the words in that life, I had to throw you under the bus. Not good. But he kind of showed his character. And a lot of times when you just meet people, you don't know what they're about. And sometimes they'll do something to you and people get upset that this person did something to them, but they shouldn't get upset because the person is doing you a favor. They're showing you their hand early. Better to know early what these people are about than later on. And, after you do so much business, or you get to know them, and then they show you their character. So it was really good for me that he showed me that, because now I knew how to treat him. I treated him accordingly. I didn't trust him no more. And I really didn't want to do anything with him no more. I just wanted to tell this story. I remembered it today. And actually, these two young gentlemen that are up on the screen had, I think, court cases after that. And unfortunately, I don't know if they went away. I think one of them went away. And that's what the life is about. And it's about treachery. And I hope you enjoyed the story. I'm going to go to bed. Have a nice night.